Why do they make these buns so hard, man? It's gonna take forever. I win. Hey guys, welcome back. It's Robert Macfarlane here, and today we're going to be going through dialogue and how to spot when it's just wrong. By the end of this episode, you're going to be able to go through your scripts and spot some of the most common mistakes that we all end up doing in dialogue and be able to rectify them. I know I'm guilty of this, but one of the first scripts I ever wrote was about this man who was so enraptured by vengeance that he ended up turning into something else. Well, as fun as that script sounded to me when I wrote it, when I was much younger than I am now, it was, well, I mean, quite apart from being terrible, it also had some awful dialogue. Between the moments of action and tension and suspense and horror and whatever else I threw in, I had to have these moments of dialogue which explained what was going on rather than actually exploring the film's story and revealing it to the audience. Instead, I chose to utilize the dialogue to kind of fill in the gaps that I realized I wasn't able to fill in, to try and get the audience to understand what was going on, and it just didn't work. Doing this script was the first time that I realized that dialogue was not meant to convey all of the information. So, if you ever find your characters telling the other characters how they feel or what their plan is in its entirety, well, you better have a really unique and good reason for them to do that. Otherwise, you're probably going to end up with the same situation that I did and your script being met with crickets. My 3 rules for getting better dialogue in your scripts. Number 1. Stop speaking in your own voice. So often we find that each and every character speaks with the same vocabulary, the same pace, the same sentence structure, and it just rings as untrue and can make the whole film feel flat. This is quite often caused by not defining your characters as deeply as physically possible.
I did not hit her. It's not true. It's bullshit. I did not hit her. I did not. Oh, hi, Mark.
More often than not, characters speak for themselves in a situation once you've done enough prep work. So really and truthfully, you throw your characters into a situation and the scene should ultimately write itself, especially if you understand what you're trying to do with the story from the beginning. Now, I know this is easier said than done, so if you do need some inspiration on ways in which people talk, well, there's always the train method. This is something I learned really early on. Next time you take a train ride or a bus ride, just sit there and listen. Something that happened to me, I was sat on a train and this is actually the first time I ever did this technique. I sat there and I was listening to 2 chaps talking behind me, one who was confessing as to how he'd smashed a very heavy glass ashtray over someone's head and ran off, to his lawyer sat next to him on the train. Totally surreal, but you're starting to understand how different people use different vocabulary, use the same words also in different ways. Exposition is one of the biggest pitfalls that most writers and directors are battling all the way through every film and project that we do. We just find ourselves in a situation where we need to push things along, keep the momentum of the film going, and for some reason we found ourselves in a position where we need to feed specific information to the audience so they don't get lost. This can be anything from telling another character what their plan is, what their emotional well-being is, what they ate for breakfast last week, or most egregious of all sins, in my opinion, is they say what just happened. Yes, it happens. I've seen some films. Don't do it. Just don't.
No doubt you have realized the splendor of my conception. First, a necklace of death about the earth. 50 globes, each releasing its nerve gas over a designated area, each capable of killing 100 million people. The human race, as you know it, will cease to exist.
The next time your character is about to reveal and lay out the entire plan for the entire movie, ask yourself, do they really need to say this? Or can we just see it? Would this character ever actually discuss their plan to begin with? Or even if your character's about to reveal some deeply held secret that not even they could have actually come to terms with themselves, ask yourself, would this character ever actually reveal the full secret? Or maybe they don't. Maybe they only reveal what makes them look good, but the audience understand maybe that there's more to this than meets the eye because maybe they've seen this before. Maybe they understand that the character's previous actions mean that this secret is only part of the truth. And partial truths are incredibly powerful because they also add so much texture and nuance to what we as humans are. Don't forget, each and every character, no matter if they are carrying the protagonist or antagonist label of your film, believe that they are heroes and will ultimately only really focus on the information that ensure that they are the hero of their own story. So how do we fix exposition? Well, not all exposition is bad. There are many videos out there that talk about how to utilize exposition, but if you do find yourself in a position where, well, the exposition just feels terrible every time you look at it, start to think about what actions can tell the same information. Juxtapose your dialogue with your actions. This idea sounds more difficult than it really is. How often have you said you're going to do something, but actually you end up not doing it in time? Or maybe you say you're going to go somewhere and you end up going somewhere entirely different. Especially when teenagers deal with their parents, this is definitely something that a lot of stories and a lot of writers have explored. But also, I think pretty much everyone does this from time to time. Priorities change during the day and they're very fluid. So when you say something to someone, you might mean it entirely. Well, an hour later, what you meant may have been your priority then, but is no longer your priority now. Those things can actually have an effect on how your characters interact with one another. If a character is known to do something and always come through, always hold true to their word, when they don't do that, well then this is a big shock to your other characters. However, if your characters are known to be a bit flaky and they actually do come through with what they were meant to do when they said that they were going to do it, then this again is another shock to your characters because, well, wow, you've bucked what type of character I expected you to be. And you see how this can be a great way to change the expectations of your audience if you enable your character to subvert their own stereotypes. But it can also go so much deeper than this. So a really interesting example of this could be a character who uses a lot of positive words, a lot of energy in their dialogue and in their actions, and in the very next scene we see them completely dependent on antidepressants or some type of drug to cope with their life. You see how the way in which an action juxtaposed with their dialogue can create more meaning. And this is something that David Mamet talks about in his book on directing. What happens in this shot, as opposed to what happens in this shot, creates a third shot in the mind of the viewer, and that is the meaning. So try to flip your words on its head. Next time you're looking at your dialogue, take their dialogue and completely flip it to the complete opposite and see what that does to the meaning of your script. So in review, number 1, stop speaking in your voice. Go out there, find out how other people talk and start to evolve your characters into their own beings. Make sure you do the groundwork and come up with a true version of what their voice really is. Evolve your exposition into something even more rich for your audience. Don't forget, exposition isn't always bad, especially if you're utilizing it to send your audience in a particular direction, but then always try to work out visual ways to say the same thing. Actions speak louder than words. Try to always evolve your character's dialogue past exposition and your audience will thank you for it. Juxtapose your dialogue with your actions. So if someone says something, they can do the opposite. And that, in a way, can derive more meaning. Ask these questions and it's going to enable you to develop more meaningful dialogue throughout your entire script. Guys, thank you so much for joining me today on this episode. I really hope you got something super useful from it. Don't forget to hit subscribe and the bell icon, and check out my Patreon in the link below, where you can get access to my awesome Discord channel for other filmmakers like yourselves, and the opportunity to have one-on-one monthly sessions with me to help develop your film.